this kind of party's rocking as always. Just like Jagger's hair there, frozen in time. The wonderful Jagger, you back? On mute, but we can take him.
Hey, Chuck, is that the Jared Allen from Kansas City jersey? Oh shit!
Oh, yeah, I'm wearing my own merch. I'm wearing my own merch.
Jared Allen.
That's pretty clean, though. I like that.
Jagger's back.
Welcome, folks. It is Dynasty Hour. Chuck is wearing his own merch. Keep repping, Chuck. I was just gonna hype you up, bro. I was just gonna hype you up. Like he's always got the vintage shit going on. Like he looks like like one of those pristine auction commercials is all the time. He's just got a different jersey on. Like we need to get them as a sponsor. Chuck is here. You could find him at Chuck Bass FF. Also, he hosts the This Guy Sucks podcast. He's doing these blind date podcasts all through the off season. They are wonderful. You can catch me and Justin on one. He'll get Andrew on one day. And speaking of Andrew, it is Mr. Mallard bringing sophistication to a podcast. You could see him at Mr. Mallard, real Mr. Mallard. And then we have Justin Herrera at SimTexMex93. You know him as Fantasy Jesus because he is here to save your lineups. And folks, we are talking the usual news and nonsense. First, Andrew, show off those cool stats that we're working. We're moving quick, guys. We'll go through the garbage first, and then we'll go through the big stuff. The garbage. The first one being Miami offers contract to Cook. We don't know what that means. It does mean that you should be wary of your Devin O'Shane shares. A lot of people who think that he is going to be a bell cow back. I think every indicator says that you are wrong. We're going to do a rapid fire, and then we're going to go on super fast. We'll start with you, Chuck. Go on.
Devin was never going to be a bell cow back. He's a long-term play. He's pass catching third down situation. There's not a running back on the open market that they could sign that I think would impact him in the short term.
That pretty much makes sense. And like, I personally think that like Cook, yeah, that pretty much makes sense. Anyone have a rebuttal before we move on to the next one? Say skip.
Come on.
No skips. Moving on.
Yep.
Another week, another 49ers story, and we're going to chug right past it. Brock Purdy's expected to throw in Jacksonville. Justin, you should he made an excellent point on last week's podcast, so go ahead and plug that one of what the 49ers are doing. They are panic telling you that Brock Purdy is ready and he's their quarterback. People like me who own a lot of Trey Lance, I'm a little bit scared. My butthole is slightly tight. I'm not going to lie, folks. We'll revisit that another time. Anyone who has an opinion, say skip. Nothing. We're moving on. And here's one that is actually relevant. I think we're actually getting into the nitty-gritty. Payton, Sean Payton, that is. The suit is my thing. Bro, I just got off work. I drove 2 hours to get here. I forgot I was wearing a suit. That's how well I wear suits. Suits wear me, buddy. Sean Payton wants to establish the run. This means a lot for your Samaje Perine and Javonte Williams shares. I've been low on Javonte Williams and high at Samaje Perine price, which is basically fucking nothing. Justin, we'll start with you. Where are you at on these two running backs?
Shoot. Where am I with those two running backs? Samaje Perine, I'll definitely buy him on the dip. But Javonte Williams has kind of dipped himself. So all this tells me is that I should grab a Broncos running back, whether it's Javonte Williams at the running back 3 price or Samaje Perine at the running back 5 price. Also, this could end up being one of those weird spots where, like, you know, somebody gets hurt and we see Leonard Fournette make an appearance or Ezekiel Elliott. This kind of feels like one of those teams where, you know, Sean Payton, he's digging in deep with this whole idea that I want a running back, to where I'm looking at him like, okay, so I'm going to make sure that Leonard Fournette's on my watch list, that all these guys that are out right now are on my watch list, because they end up in Denver, that could be a good situation for them.
I know you didn't mean to, but what you just said just killed Samaje Perine value. Because like right now his whole value is that like no one is there.
Oh my God.
Because like Javonte Williams is hurt. So I was just like, oh, so I should buy it. Like Samaje Perine. Like he's still like nothing. He's like worth it, but that means I like shouldn't be excited about it, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So like I agree with you 100%. I honestly thought they would draft somebody because regardless of what Javonte Williams is, and this is just me looking at the past, I'm not one who likes to always like stay in the past, but like I'll move to you, Andrew. Do you worry that Javonte Williams is never going to be the bell cow because his profile fits more into like that Mark Ingram role in what we've seen in the teams in the past? Like I see him being the grinder, but the real value is going to be maybe Kendre Miller, or actually I'm talking about the Saints. I'm sorry. Maybe Samaje Perine, maybe anyone else catching passes and Javonte missing out on those roles. Do you worry about that? Or are you just rolling the dice because it's so cheap?
I am worried about that. I'm worried about that with every running back across the league right now. But you nailed it, Javonte Williams. That first year when we saw him, the main reason why that worked so well is because it was both him and Gordon. They were both popping off. I know this is a completely different offense now, but I don't think he's built to be a bell cow. I don't think that was ever really the plan for him, just like every other running back across the league. So yeah, sure, worry. But to Justin's point, his value's dipped quite a bit. At some point, he's going to become a worthwhile bargain to grab.
So this is why I said this is hot, because like the fact that you said he's not built for that, that's a little spicy for me. I don't agree with that. Like my whole point is that like Javonte Williams is like severely injured, and we've seen with like backs in the past where like, oh, he'll be fine. He's built different because of these two other backs that were actual freaks, like Adrian Peterson. You know, like Adrian Peterson like broke the ACL for us, and now we don't have realistic expectations, and that's what I worry about.
Yeah,
Chuck,
that's huge.
Yeah, I'm going to force you to say something on this one because this is a spicy topic and Andrew deserves discussion. So fight back. Here's your sword. Go.
So this one's funky to me. It makes sense if you're like trying to win games this year to bring in another running back because of like the kind of like the mishmash they have there. But I think they're going to use this year as a tryout for all the players that are on the roster. Judy, Sutton, Samaje, Javonte. I mean, Javante's never really, you know, I think he has the ability to be, you know, a full-time guy, but it's never been asked of him in years, to be honest. But I mean, I do think he's capable of it. Samaje is what he is. I mean, he can handle some rushing work, but he's a scat back, all like maximum, I think, to the potential. And I think Javonte right now is basically, you know, come back from injury is what we saw from a healthy Joe Mixon last year. So I really like Samaje for what he's going to bring. You know, Russell Wilson was never really a big check down back, but last year they threw to their running backs at a higher clip than most teams in the league, which is really encouraging. And I think Sean Payton's only going to be better for that. So, you know, an emphasis on the run game, but I think it's going to be much more the running backs and not necessarily just ground and pound. That's not the right word. Not necessarily just, you know, pure rushing, just running backs involved in the process.
For sure, because I feel like the Broncos have already tried to establish a run. They've already kind of proven that they want to be like every down backs. Okay, yep. We got two more pieces of news. This one, I think, but both of these are actually significant in moving dynasty value, and that's why I think it's important to talk about these things. Kenneth Walker is expected to get 70 touches per beat writer. And I even put that in the show notes because I wanted to bring up on how we treat news like this. It could mean two different things. Someone in your league is going to confirm a bias and panic, or nothing's going to happen. I know that's like the only two outcomes, but it's important to understand that just like us, beat writers are looking for any amount of news while we're in this off-season black hole. So for someone who has been incredibly high on Zach Charbonnet, like me as your resident rookie junkie, I've been incredibly high at telling you to buy Zach Charbonnet. This does not sway me whatsoever. Again, it's a beat writer. He didn't quote anybody. He didn't even say per random source. He just said he could get 17 touches. And like, yeah, that's in like the realm of possibilities. Yeah, like I could be president when I graduated high school, just like my school counselor told me. But like, is that likely? Probably not. So like
good
Chuck
counselor.
will circle around. Yeah, exactly. Like very, very supportive. Chuck, we'll go with you. We've kind of been on the same page on like how we build our rosters as far as running backs, both in Dynasty and redraft. How does this Kenneth Walker news affect you? Do you like him? Or you like me, where this is the off season and we take everything with a grain of salt?
I'm sorry. You just made me think, my guidance counselor, he touched me on the hip one time and I really didn't like it. Sorry, just bring back old stuff. But so as far as Kenneth Walker, no, this reporting is, it's nonsense. It's ridiculous. And it means absolutely nothing. It has less bearing than like guys in Twitter mock drafts saying like, oh dude, Charbonnet is going to be nothing this year. Seattle rush history, blah, blah, blah. Like I take that just as seriously as I take this kind of reporting. I really like Walker. I think he's going to be a player in the league for a long time. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be in Seattle. I just think that he has the kind of skill set. And if they're not going to put a lot of wear and tear on his tires, I don't know if this is the time to acquire him because we don't know exactly how the split's going to go. Maybe he might lose some short-term value as the year progresses, and you can maybe take a swing at him then when his value dips. But as far as what we're seeing coming out of camps and reporting right now, just flush it down the toilet.
For sure. I know, Justin, you've been a guy who's been high on Kenneth Walker as far as like higher than I would say. I wouldn't say like overly high. And bear with me, folks. I'll reset in just a minute. This is just a weekly ritual at this point, but I'll continue to push through the news
Good
and
luck.
nonsense. Yeah, exactly. Like, are you in the category of this confirms a bias, or are you like the reasonable folk where this is a beat writer who's making a story because he can?
Yeah, I'm with Chuck. This is a guy who literally said, hey, I've got nothing to do right now. Let's write an article about how Kenneth Walker might get 17 touches a game. Come on now. And you guys have pretty much
So specific.
Like at this point, it's like, dude, 17 touches a game. Oh, who told you that one? Was it the special teams coach or was it the water boy? Like, who got you that little bit of insight there, So I trust everybody at this point about as far as I could throw them, and I can't throw them very far. Adam Scheffner, I don't trust his shit right now because he's just getting it from these same jackasses. At this point, no coach is going to reasonably tell you what their scheme is for a player. So that being said, I do agree with what Chuck's saying. Kenneth Walker has the talent to be a guy in this league for the next 5 to 6 years, however long a running back body will allow you to take the amount of hits that they have to take. He's going to be a guy for that duration of time. He was, in my opinion, the best guy to come out of last year. I think Breece Hall he's a really talented guy, but he really fell into the best system for him, whereas Kenneth Walker, I think you can plug and play him in any system. And then, as far as Zach Charbonnet goes, I like the kid. I think he's talented. I think he'll get more of the pass touches or catches, whatever.
I like pass touches.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna go out there and try and buy all the Zach Charbonnets right now. If Kenneth Walker, if this news persists and obviously something happens, then I'll go out and grab him. But that's kind of where I'm at this point.
For sure. And like you pretty much hit every point that any one of us would make at this point. So I'll move on to the actual piece of real news that is actually all this matters, but like the Josh Jacobs news is like roster changing. And I'll tee you guys up with my opinion. And then for you guys who are on YouTube and Rumble, I will reset. But for you viewers at home, I'm going to disappear for about 5 to 10 minutes. Josh Jacobs, it could hold out into the regular season. And why I think this is more significant than most most running backs is because he's still like 25 years old or something like that. He's still relatively young. He is the crux of an offense and the crux of not just an offense, but a lot of our fantasy teams. Like to me, he's the ideal hero running back target because he's still on like the south side of like 26, 27, and the production that we've seen him finally realize. So I'll give it to Chuck, and then I'll be back in just a moment.
I hope it's a wardrobe change on top of all that, just for comedy's sake. This one is tough because, we all talked about Saquon Barkley last week, and I don't feel any differently about Josh Jacobs. these guys are seeing Allen Robinson and Cortland Sutton and Hunter Renfrow making $15 million a year. And they're like, wait, how much am I getting paid? I'm getting franchised to hold the ball 350 times. And my team's barely scrapping by to get, wins. Just let him do his thing. I mean, I know this is tough for dynasty managers because he was a big win now acquisition for a lot of people. So it's like, oh, Jesus, that kind of kills the whole point. But I mean, it just moves my needle in no meaningful way. We've seen this a bunch lately. So I'll let Justin hit the home run here.
Yeah, I mean, you put it right over the plate for me on this one. Josh Jacobs.
Nice. Keep the analogy going. I like it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Let's hope it's not a swing and a miss on this one. But yeah, I mean, listen, guys, I got a question for you. Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Breece Hall. Who are you most worried about at this point? 2 of them are holdouts, and 1 of them has an injury problem with the crux of Dalvin Cook possibly getting mentioned by Tyler Conklin as coming to the team. Who are you most worried about at that point?
I'm more worried about Hall just because I'm not worried about these contract situations at all.
That's exactly my point. These things happen all the fucking time. They get resolved in training camp, if not near the end or the beginning of preseason. And then we never remember them because these guys go on to have, a good season or, whatever. I'm not worried about Josh Jacobs. This team is nothing without Josh Jacobs. They pretty much established that. I'm not going to go out and buy Zamir White based off of this information. That's just, come on. That's just not going to freaking move the needle. That's not going to be a good, smart move for you. Only the truly dumb fantasy players will look at this and go, I need to go acquire Zamir White. No, you don't. Let me stop you right here and right now. No, you don't. But yeah, that's all I really got to say about that. I hope I, cleared the fence on that one for you, Chuck. If not, I know LeDuc will hit me right back in.
Well, you mentioned dumb fantasy managers if going out and getting Zamir White or saying that they need to move on from one of these guys just because they're nervous about the contract situation. Hell, you probably have one of those managers in your league. Find that person and just ask what the price is. If you get the sense they're panicking, might as well see if you can get them like super low. It's super low value right now. It could be a win for you.
Man,
that's all. Like this time of year when the news is this like scattered and dare I say made up to an extent, use that to your advantage. See, we all know the guys in our leagues. We all know the guys in our leagues who overreact and who panic. Feast on them.
This is the time. This is the time to capitalize.
I would go straight for Breece Hall because if this talk about Dalvin Cook going to the Jets keeps on, I would just go to the Breece Hall guy. I'd be like, you hear what they're saying about Breece Hall over there? They're saying he's not going to be able to make it and do good this year. And, you might get a jabroni that will actually like listen to that and go, oh, wait, they are looking at Dalvin Cook. And
it would just be so surprising to me if the Raiders are going to play hardball. The coach, McDaniels is on the hot seat. And then on the flip side of it, Saquon Barkley, he's like the linchpin of the organization right now. They're not going to let this continue with the momentum that they have. It's just dumb. They'll resolve themselves naturally. Shit.
That's just because he has so many pins in his body from all those broken bones.
Yeah, physical linchpin. Absolutely.
Yeah. You back? You good, Jagger?
Jack it off.
He might be.
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm back.
There we go.
Are we worried on Josh Jacobs? I'm getting the general consensus is that everything's probably going to be fine.
Yeah.
I think we can move on to the meat and potatoes of this thing. Let's get it going.
Yeah. All right. Let's pay them bills then, Jagger. What do you say?
I like it.
Cool.
Okay.
Fantasy Sports Corp and Underdog Fantasy have teamed up to start your fantasy season.
We're talking
off in the win column
QBX
with
strategy.
Best Ball.
I don't know if
What is best ball? It's
any
quite
of you
simply the
guys
easiest
have
way
been
to
on,
win. No team management, no trades, No waivers.
fantasy Twitter.
It's their biggest contest ever, and it has only gotten bigger. You simply have to
but
sit
a post that went
and
viral.
win. You don't even have to set your lineup. Always get your best score every week. Just enter a contest, draft your team, and Underdog will do the rest. What could make this even better? How about free money, up to $100 using our exclusive promo code? Go online now and use the promo code TSS Dynasty to double your deposit up to $100. You tell them Gingerbread sent you. Good girl.
Dynasty. TSS Dynasty. The Dynasty Hour.
And if you were paying close attention there, you got a little teaser for what's coming up here in this next segment.
Yeah, I like that. I like that part. Foreshadowing.
You good there, Jagger?
I think we might. Are we on a delay?
Yeah, we're having some connection issues, guys. I apologize with Jagger's internet. It looks like he's trying to talk, but he's on mute. We can see his visual fine now, but the audio is now giving us issues. Hopefully, you can jump in here in a second with us. But the meat and potatoes, as Justin alluded to for tonight, is we're talking some different strategies that people in our leagues sometimes deploy for their teams. And one of the ones that are hot right now is the QBX strategy. Jagger, it looks like you're back. You back? No. Okay. Is the QBX the QBX? Every now and then I'm just going to throw a little. You there? Hello. The QBX strategy, which is basically hoarding. It's hoarders for fantasy football, and it doesn't have to be just QBs. It can be many positions, but QB seems to be the way that it's going right now. And I think a lot of fantasy formats QB values is through the roof right now. So. Yeah. First question here, are you guys in or out? Is it Bush League to hoard QBs?
Hang on
your team? Chuck, go to you first. I see your finger raised.
I don't think anything in fantasy football is Bush League sans like collusion and or I don't know, bending or manipulating stuff. I love this because theoretically people that hoard quarterbacks, if it plays out like you should and everybody holds the line like a union strike, that's one less team you have to worry about. Almost always, though, somebody crosses the picket line and trades them like an equal value pick or if not more. And it just kind of slowly ruins and manipulates things. Hoarding quarterbacks to me is antithetical to like hoarding defenses or something like that. Like, fine, clog up your roster with all this stuff. It means nothing to me. Just everybody, just no union busters. Everybody stay strong.
Yeah, to me, I feel like no one goes into a draft with the strategy of hoarding QBs or really hoarding any one position. I feel like it happens after maybe like 3 or 4 rounds of the way the trend of the draft going, the way you were planning on it going, but a few picks before you, and it kind of blows up your whole plan, and it becomes almost like a survival mode. Like that's what it is. Sure. This strategy feels like a draft survival mode to me. Justin, how do you feel about that? Do you think people are going into drafts with the idea of hoarding QBs, or is it a survival?
No, nobody goes in the draft thinking of hoarding QBs. And I like to call these people conversation starters because these are guys that are knocking on your DM going, hey, bro, I got
they are.
I saw that you have Desmond Ridder and Trey Lance. Do you want to get another quarterback?
100%.
I'm not going to lie. I've been one of those guys before. It's not Bush
League. It's a thing.
Just playing the damn game, you know? And to answer your question, LeDuc, it's completely a strategy that people kind of just like when shit goes down and when you start to see people flying off your queue, you start to panic a little bit.
Hell yeah.
And I know with every position, if you give up, you know, let's say hero RB, you give up on hero RB and you're down to like getting Dameon Pierce as your RB1. Guess what? You're going to freaking go back to back to back to back to back with running backs, trying to stockpile and make sure that you have somebody to field. And that's that's just with any position. If you miss out on the first 20 quarterbacks, you're going to try and get the 4 of the last 32 because you need to make up for that lack of somebody who's like a strong talent up front with, quality. Or what you want to make up, you want to mix up quality.
No, you're right.
Quality.
You're right.
You know what I'm saying.
Yes. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Sorry, guys. This is my second podcast in a row over here. I'm losing everything, including my mind.
It's all good.
But yeah, so that's totally a viable strategy, and I hold nothing against them. I like to talk to those guys because at the same time, like they're always kind of looking for something as well as you are. You know what I mean? Like you said, if they're going 4 deep on quarterbacks, that probably means that they skimped on like a tight end or something like that. And you can always be able to find a way to finagle a deal in your favor, or at least make it perceive in your mind like it's going in your favor, even if you're the loser of the deal in reality.
Well, and that person fell into that situation as something they felt like they had to do. So they're most likely open to trading right off the bat. So you're going in with some arguments pre-ready to go. Does it become Bush League though if this strategy then gets employed, say mid-season to the end of the season, right before playoffs, as a strategy to stop others from grabbing positions that they might need for the playoffs to reinforce their team?
Yeah,
then I love it. No, man, I
still
I
not
love
Bush
it.
League.
I love it, and I love these people because they're just like, it's like this whole GameStop thing, man. These people just buy the stock and they ride it, and they're not going to trade it until they get the deal that they want, and it's going to put them out of business. I mean, you start getting to the playoffs and you start ultra hoarding positions. I mean, there might be a conversation to be had if it's boundary pushing, but I mean, for the most part, like I just did a real draft 2 weeks ago, and the guy took in a single quarterback draft, he took Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts and Kyler Murray. And we all laughed at him, and we knew we were only competing with 11 people. And then a week later, some guy trades Jerry Jeudy for Joe Burrow. I'm just like, what are you doing? Like you're giving this guy exactly what he wants. This guy is going to flail away. He's going to disappear. He's dust. He already makes hilarious decisions. Let him continue to make more. Don't throw them a lifeline. Let them drown themselves.
That all makes sense. So then we're going to skip over the next question because I'm pretty sure with the way we've just talked about this, we're not punishing any players for deploying the strategy.
Well, no, you know what? I have to ask though. What does that even look like? What does that even look like? Truly, like how are you going to? What are you going to do? How would you even punish? What would somebody have to do for you to punish them? Would they have to start their draft with 6 straight quarterbacks? I mean, like where does the come on guy fall in line?
I mean, why would you punish them? They're blatantly making a decision to be in this position. So it's like, it's not like you were saying before, like collusion. You're not trading Joe Burrow for fucking Terrace Marshall Jr. over here. You're just it's like the fucking guys who go tight end premium and literally go first like 5 picks are tight ends. Do you blame them for employing that strategy, or do you just say fuck? Like now I got to deal with the Tyler Conklins of the world. Yeah.
The punishment is the roster. Basically.
Pretty much.
That's what we're getting down to.
Now I wish we had Jagger on here and able to hear his his audio. Because I kind of am confused on what he means by this next question about is it wrong to make a personal move, albeit being legal? I'm not really sure where that what that means.
Yeah, well, I guess the question would be, how do you interpret it just in your day-to-day life? Is it wrong to make personal moves, albeit legal? Is that a yes or a no, or am I supposed to incriminate myself in some way here? Because I make personal, I make personal moves on the reg, but they're not legal.
Are the statute of limitations up in your guys' states too?
Hey man, I live in Kentucky. They're rewriting it on the reg. Well, the best way that I can interpret that, unless he wants to chime in, is it's like, what is a personal move? What is this? How does this affect me, regardless of if it's kosher or not, right? If it's an unwritten rule, I guess you could say. Like, we don't like to play in leagues where there's like, I mean, our main leagues, like nobody wants to play in a league with that guy, whether it's, somebody who's going to, tank something for one reason or another. Even if it's within the bylaws, maybe he's talking about bylaws and, fair game and stuff like that. But as far as, I don't know, personal moves, it's all personal moves to me. I'm not playing for any of you guys.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right there. I mean, it really is a thin line to describe what a truly personal move would be there. And I do agree. Tanking is one of those rare occasions where you can really take somebody's judgment into question there, because you're like, what are you doing here? Like, you just got this team and you're already trading away for all first round picks. But, I guess the legality part of that, or at least the part where there's a little bit of justice and consequence to it, is now we've decided if you're going to do that, you're going to pay ahead of time. You're not going to just abandon this team. You're going to have to pay for either you coming in next year or us finding a replacement for you to take over this shitty team. So I think that there's always some way around figuring out how to deal with like degenerates. Obviously I always hate the guys that are in the consolation brackets and they're still participating in the waiver wire. I'm just like, I get it.
Yeah.
You still want to win, but let's leave it for the big guys here. Okay. Like, don't go out and take Gus Edwards on his first start from me just because you want to win your consolation or your 13th pick in the draft. You know what I mean? Like, I want to win a title here. You should be cut off. That's just my personal feelings about that, guys. I'm bringing the personal into this.
Important. It's important. It's important to be able to pull all that, because like where all this stemmed from was that Twitter post that Tear Down made about somebody being very upset about somebody QB hoarding, and like, look, we've all been there where like, whether it's legal or not, you are very unhappy with a decision that somebody else in your league has made, and it varies, right? The scope of what that entails is endless, and where you're just like, really, fuck this, fuck you guys, I'm out of here. This is bullshit. You're hot. We all get hot for a sec. But it's just like, I don't expect everybody or even most people to conform by like the norm of like, okay, let's all do, this is what the book says, right? When you go play blackjack, what do you do, right? You play by the book. And if you don't play by the book, you're an asshole. It works if you're playing by yourself and you can do whatever you want, but you're playing with a group at the table. Fuck, I knew it. I knew the odds of one of the four of us here being one of those guys at the blackjack table.
I've never left a blackjack table down though, so.
Oh God.
Well,
oh God.
like,
I want to see your internet browser history and how much internet blackjack you play.
None. I think we finally got Jagger though. I heard his voice.
Basically what I was just going to say is like, I find this whole thing ridiculous. And though I I basically wanted to talk about the cautions of QB strategy, because I heard I heard most of what you guys said. And basically like, we're not going to punish anyone for doing whatever the hell they want with their team. But I can't get myself to do QBX, because after a certain amount, what are you really drafting? Like, what are you really taking away from somebody? Because I'm thinking about like, once you get to like Mac Jones, once you get to Kirk Cousins, like I guess you're getting like tradable assets. But I don't know if any of you guys hit this, but when you are getting a surplus at a position, you are decreasing your chances at having high value at other positions. So it's like, yeah, you're getting leverage out of other people in your league, but you have none on your own if you really think about it.
Yeah.
Because like, I'm a guy who like wants to build for my wide receivers. So if I have Justin Jefferson, you're like, well, I drafted Mac Jones, or I drafted Daniel Jones. What is that really going to actually get you in value?
No, you're right, because, and I think you hit the absolute nail on the head with naming specifically that Daniel Jones tier, because it's like after a few guys, it's like, okay, most of fantasy is like, okay, I guess I'll take these quarterbacks. It's not like, wow, that's a guy that I want and I want him now. It's just not the case, as opposed to maybe 70 skill position players where there could be varying degrees of that opinion on like, I want him. So you're cutting your legs off.
So none of us are going.
Yeah, I agree.
To do this strategy,
and then like, yeah, and it's just like to me, like hoarding any position, I think is just like a bad idea. Like out of all of them, I think wide receiver is probably the safest. But like Andrew, you've talked about this like right here on this podcast about like I'm going to get a bunch of wide receivers and then I'm going to trade for my running back. But if you're in a league who thinks like they're still drafting in 2011, it might be really hard for you to move which objectively a quality wide receiver to get this running back. So my strategy is just draft a well-rounded, balanced team. I know that sounds like incredibly boring and edgy, but I just try to draft a good fucking team. And like, I can do things by like obviously you're not going to have wide receiver 1 and RB1 and like QB1s in every spot. But like I fade running backs, but this whole idea that like, well, I'm going to hoard one position. No, you prioritize the position, but I like you're creating a market deficit, but all you're doing is just giving yourself your own positional deficit. So like, I don't know, man, like if you zig instead of zag, I guess that's one strategy. So I guess the only other thing that I want to bring up, and I guess I'll pose this to you, Chuck. Let's say that you're not trying to win. Does that change like the QBX strategy?
So I would just have
Let's
to
say
get a
that,
couple
like,
more
I'm
clarifications.
Going for Bijan. This is 2022, and I'm not trying to win. Maybe that is a different strategy because then you can afford to take a hit on value in order to get draft picks or whatnot. Does that affect you at all? Because in Dynasty, we have that freedom to not compete all the time,
Yeah. No, absolutely not. I think that you just have to let people run their course. And especially, I mean, how many quarterbacks really hold a baseline level of value in these drafts anyways? I mean, if you're doing a startup or something like that, I can understand, but it's like, just that's the other thing, is like, let that dude run. If somebody's doing that, then you're all in the rest of your league is all at a similar advantage. Some people might say a similar disadvantage. I'd say it's probably a similar advantage because you're going to recognize it early and you're going to handle it accordingly. I just don't think it's making the ripple effect that the drafter intends it to have, that the draftees would respond to. I mean, it's just a bunch of baloney, really, to be honest.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. All right. I guess like anyone else got anything? Just like give your proverbial skip. Go ahead, Chuck.
I think I finally, sorry, it took me a little bit to maybe, once I read the post again and what inspired all this, when you talked about, is it wrong to make personal, albeit legal moves? You're talking about like to spite somebody else, right? Like something that is like, maybe this isn't in the interest of winning. And that's what I think maybe your last question was alluding to. Like, this is like, no, screw you. I'm taking quarterbacks to screw your team over, not to benefit mine. Is that kind of what you were alluding to with that?
A little bit, yeah, because like some people, I think sometimes as like especially in Dynasty, redraft is a little bit different because like you got those 18 weeks and it's fair game, baby. That's why like redraft is like Tinder, and then like Dynasty is a long haul with a marriage, like it can be a little bit personal, but at the same time, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I read a report that like Bill Belichick traded up to draft a guy just to like fuck over someone else in his division. Like that is a part of sports, and like maybe I'm like feeding into some type of competitive alpha male, whatever statement you want to throw over thing, but like that's a part of the game, folks. Like a part of it is disrespecting your friends. Like some of it is just like, hey, like sometimes I draft players.
Thank you.
Yeah. I draft players that like I like them the same, but I'll pick one player because I know someone else likes this player. And that is literally something that will move me. I know that sounds weird, but it will throw their game off in a draft.
Well,
like,
exactly,
that's
because
just-
you know that if they have their heart set on that person, you're trying to make them panic. You're trying to make them
Exactly.
start a tight end run around early, so that then everyone else starts ripping off tight ends, and then the guy that you wanted to fall then ends up falling. Like, it all kind of adds up and makes sense. It's all connected. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, we're not competing
Exactly.
against, like, typically this isn't underdog where you're typically competing against like strangers and you hope your team performs well. If I'm playing in a league, I typically want to step on the neck of people and I want to look them in the eyes as they're losing the life from their body. That's what we do this for. The cash prize is great. The cash prize paid for all of my utilities this year, but the actual thrill of you losing hope, I love it. I love it so much.
That's the sweetness. It's the dessert. Cause like we all love a fucking steak, man. But like if you get that fucking lava cake at the end of it, that just sets off
Creme
the whole
brulee,
evening,
yeah.
man. Yeah, exactly. It just sets everything off. And to me, that's what keeps people engaged. Yes, make it personal, because if you're personal, that person is going to try to fuck you over back. And you know what that means? They're going to make moves and you're going to have an active league. So sometimes you guys get upset just because you have a league that sounds kind of fun. Like if you're doing like personal moves like that, then I'm just like, oh man, I love it. I love it. It's like why we Exactly. It's why we watch reality television, folks. We want to see the pettiness. I want to be involved in it. I want to affect it. It's why I've watched fucking like 11 seasons of The Bachelor. It's garbage. It's unhealthy. It's probably not that great, but it's fun and I like it. And I don't give a shit what anyone thinks. So I guess we'll leave it right there. And we'll talk about some Twitter takes from yours truly, Chuck and myself. I posted about James Conner. I didn't think this would be a hot topic at all, but as Twitter goes, you'll post something that doesn't seem that far-fetched, and then all of a sudden a lot of people are telling you that you should die and never tweet again. So I don't think James Conner is worth even. I think he's worth being rostered, but I think he is way too high in ADP. I think it is irresponsible for analysts to say you should trade for James Conner without context. Like some people are like, he costs nothing and you can trade him. We were saying the same thing about Zeke last year. So I'll start with a rational wild card that I actually never really know what he's going to say. Mr. Sophisticated Andrew, go ahead. What do you think about this?
James Conner is someone that when I see him on the draft board so far, I just keep going. I have no confidence in James Conner. I have no confidence in even holding him as a valuable trade piece after a few weeks. Like this, he's useless to me, which sucks because when we first saw him in Pittsburgh and like just from an athletic standpoint, like he was fun to watch. Like he seemed like he had that extra step about him and the way he played the game but then just like
he was a
else,
violent runner. Yeah.
And then just like everything else when it comes to running backs. Injuries then change the way they play in the future, which then gets them moved to a new team and a new offense that doesn't fit the scheme, their style of running the same. Like it just, and especially being on that offense in Arizona, like I no, James Conner's useless to me in all aspects.
See, then that's my argument. Like people kept, and this is both right and wrong with fantasy. And I know this is crazy. Like anyone can pick stats and say it's wrong to choose them now, or it's wrong to choose them in the future. But here's a case where we're only looking at last year's stats and not looking at the picture that we have in front of us. Because I've had people like the big one, they're like, well, here's James Conner splits without Kyler Murray. Because my argument is that offense is not good. They don't want to be good. Like they clearly have, like they are clearly kind of packing it in for next season, whether that's for Caleb Williams, like some people think, or whether that's for Marvin Harrison Jr. or whatever. They're clearly packing it in for next season. I don't think it's worth, especially like, again, this is a dynasty show, folks. Redraft, we could talk about ADP later on something else, but even in that, I think it's too damn high that you are expecting someone on a rebuilding team with a new coach who is 28 years old and has never played a full season to be like the crux of your team. Like you're drafting someone to retire on your roster. Justin, you are a watcher of the NFC East. Let's put it that way. As a 49ers fan, what is your opinion on James Conner? Where are you at?
So I'm okay with him for a season. The real question is do you want to get stuck with it? Do you want to get stuck with the grenade because it's going to explode in 2024 most likely? I would not expect the Arizona Cardinals to want to retain him after 2024. I would expect them to be moving on cap space wise, maybe drafting a running back, and I think they probably have a good chance at this point of getting Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. and really revamping that entire offense. So for me, I'm going, sure, if I can get him at a decent price, and I'm not talking like first round pick, I'm talking like late second round pick, something I really could care less about in a rookie draft. I'll trade him away for that if I have a rock solid team and I just need that complimentary back that's like going to be a flex some week, that's going to be insurance for my other backs. Sure, I'll take it because the workload's going to be there. I mean, this team is going to be running the ball for the first however many games Kyler Murray's going to be gone. I mean, we could probably book in about 8 of them. And then after that, who knows? He could probably get shut down for the entire season just to save draft value for trades. So there is a damn good chance we see James Conner hit 300 carries easily. And if he stays healthy, maybe even go into that like Derrick Henry 350 range where you're like, whoa.
I'm sorry, I can't believe that whatsoever because it's two things. Here's where I have to push back. What people don't understand, to get that amount of carries, you have to have an efficient offense. If you're consistently playing behind the chains, you are not going to have those carries. And that's what I'm saying. Say what you want about Tennessee's offense. They've had their bread and butter and they know what they're going to do. And that's why Derrick Henry has had that sustainable offense. If you think about the New England Patriots of past and old, they know what they were going to do and they have the proper offense to support a running back that does that. The Pittsburgh Steelers, the same thing. Are we thinking Clayton Tune is going to lead a sustainable drive to have running backs that can consistently get that many carries? I can't believe it. I cannot get there.
Well, and here's what we need to remember too with 20. Sorry, real fast. People want to remember his 2021 season in Arizona, and because he had a good fantasy season then. The big reason is because he had 15 touchdowns. He had the same amount of yards as he had last year, but he had 15 touchdowns, which makes that season look a lot better. Right. To your point, Jagger, they're not going to be in the red zone all that often, I don't think, to where he's good. Forget the red zone. They're not going to be within the 5-yard line all that often for him to get those touchdowns.
Exactly.
So I don't see him getting more than 7 or 8 touchdowns again this year. Probably less than that, though.
Yeah, we're straight up doing at this point with James Conner, well, he's the only guy. And with running backs, we can kind of do that, but it doesn't work that well because running backs are the most codependent position besides maybe tight end. If you don't have a good offense, no matter how good your running back is, they're not going to be that great. Shout out to Jonathan Taylor. Chuck, I'll let you have the last word before we move on to your hot take. Where are you at on this James Conner situation?
No, I mean, I agree with varying degrees of everything you guys said. I'm going to project him for 200 rushing attempts and maybe 50 targets, maybe 8 catches. I don't know how much fun they're going to be having in Arizona this year, and I know it's certainly going to be a pain in the ass. He's just, like I mentioned earlier, he is a big, strong, powerful dude. I just don't know how much that's going to come into play this year. I think he could easily be a top 20 running back in fantasy this year, but maybe not a lot of RB1 weeks, just that kind of consistent tallying up, 80 rushing yards on 20 attempts, maybe a touchdown here or there. And then by this time next year, he's not going to be on a team, like you said, which spurred this whole conversation, right? He's going to go from somebody that people think they can pencil into their lineup as a roster core to not even being a guy that you can have on your bench. Now, is this scenario where he has a Latavius Murray type, end of his career where he bounces from team to team, powerful red zone threat who can just be a little bit of, a ring chasing type? Sure. But that's not really something you like to bank on, especially with a guy who's been as banged up as he's been throughout his career, not early in his career, throughout it. So I mean, there's so much talent in the game right now. There's no reason to. I think even a late second is a little much for. I mean, unless you're in a win now scenario, and if you're in a win now scenario and you have the capital to spend, I would still push back against it. But I mean, if you're talking about value range, just be careful. Sometimes these guys get a ton of volume and they're Peyton Barber, and they're top 10 in rushing attempts for the year. But their defense is down 14 at the start of the first, and they don't have a lot that they can do. It's brutal.
Makes sense. Well, we'll end it right there. We'll pay the bills one last time, and then we'll finish with our last topic. Jazz Casino coming up next.
Jazz, Sportsbook, Casino, and Racebook, the world's best resource for all-purpose online wagering. For over 20 years, Jazz has provided the best and quickest payouts in sports and entertainment wagers. Live sports betting, covering all the major sports leagues, and even into the new and exciting world of esports. Down the stretch you'll come, with Jazz's online horse wagering. Get paid when you play with Jazz's fun and exciting online casino games. Go online now and use the promo code TSS for our new members deals. Jazz Sportsbook, Casino, and Racebook, the world's best resource for online wagering.
Our next Twitter take, it's to Chuck. He is someone who still defends George Pickens. I think that his market has corrected over here lately. And by corrected, I mean we're finally drafting Deontay Johnson ahead of George Pickens, which I think is even the right move in Dynasty. Is he ever going to be a wide receiver one? Chuck, since this is your topic, take us away.
No. And this is my topic. And I went to bat for George Pickens because I think that there's this unfair expectation. I agree with Deontay Johnson, and I agree that he is Deontay Johnson is the guy, and he should be the guy. This is Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Not every wide receiver was born and even can be your Justin Jeffersons, your Chris Olaves. Like, sometimes the NFL just has a need for a guy that can make big time jump ball catches, block incredibly, and just be a cool, tough dude. Those guys have careers. Maybe they're 6 years, maybe they're 8 years, maybe they're 10 years if you're playing in Pittsburgh and you want to be a lifer. But just like a lot of these wide receivers, the downside of all of this is when you're not as crisp and clean and you don't have the well-rounded game that the other guys have, you're more and more dependent on your quarterback, which is tough when your quarterback is Kenny Pickett. But if your quarterback isn't Kenny Pickett for much longer, maybe there's a little bit of opportunity there.
And see, you hit a good point. A part of what makes me want to fade George Pickens is not even just his talent in a vacuum, but it is Kenny Pickett. I don't think Kenny Pickett can support anyone, let alone like all the mouths they have to feed there. So, like, to be honest, I have very little faith in Kenny Pickett as a prospect. I think he's like Desmond Ridder with better marketing, to use the quote of the week on Twitter.
Sure.
Justin, we'll let you have a turn on here. Where are you at on these Pittsburgh wide receivers? Do you like, or where are you at on Kenny Pickett? Do you like Kenny Pickett?
Oh, I think so. I do not like Kenny Pickett whatsoever. I think that it's pretty indicative of where he should have gone last year, knowing that he had, 7 and 5 TD to interception ratio. He has weapons around him. He has a running back who is a wide receiver as well. He's got a tight end who was great the previous season, and he's got 2 wide receivers, one of them who's just an all-time stalwart as far as just being a possession guy, and then you've got George Pickens, who on any other team would probably be a star. So it's kind of hard to get behind somebody who can't utilize that much talent. But then again, I think he was a little overdone at Pittsburgh, at the University of Pittsburgh anyways. I think the hype train came in hard with him, and he ended up finding his way into a number 1 pick, which I Don't know how, don't know why. Mike Tomlin would make that decision, but he stuck with him for another 4 years. So, long story short, George Pickens, once you get traded like Chase Claypool, I think you'll have a better career than Chase Claypool had. So, hopefully he gets traded. Fingers crossed, boys. Not to the
And
Patriots.
to get in the weeds,
With this,
yeah, like I don't even think he's a Patriots wide receiver, but to get in the weeds a little bit, I was pleasantly surprised by George Pickens' reception perception profile. I don't like it's one of those things where I think I had like a different image in my head, but like when I actually like built this show sheet and like looked at it, it was much better than I thought it was. Like he has a very well-rounded profile, and honestly, the things that he doesn't do well at is all the short yardage stuff that Deontay Johnson is best at, like the digs, the curls, the slants, stuff like that. You know, like, and I guess with pure usage that is fine, but I think to be a total film bro and to dig in the weeds in that a little bit more, it's kind of indicative of what he is as a route runner, which he's not that great at one, and that's why I think that like when people say that. Exactly. When he goes to another team, I don't think he's going to be anything much different. And he's like, and like Jordan McNamara made a point today, and that's rare when me and Jordan McNamara are like on the same side of Dynasty. But like he said that he's Gabe Davis with better marketing. That's what I kind of feel like. Like he has a clear role, and that makes him rosterable in fantasy. But when we weigh that against his cost, which is like the wide receiver 28, is it actually worth it? Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, no, well, because you're getting into exactly what my point was going to be. I'm going to make an outrageous comparison here that people are probably going to hate me for. So this is not a skill for skill comparison. This is a situation and role comparison here. But it goes right back to the past Steelers. George Pickens is the role that Martavis Bryant played for them years ago, and he was very good at that role with Pittsburgh. The second they shipped him out of there and he had to be more than that, that's when he showed his flaws. What worries me
Justin
about
and me doing the same pose right now. What
worries me about George Pickens in Pittsburgh right now is that Pittsburgh offense, obviously when Martavis Bryant was there, was a lot different looking, a lot more stable and efficient. I'm not sure Kenny Pickett or anything in that offense can sustain role players outside of Deontay Johnson and Pat Freiermuth being their stable pass catchers. So I don't think he is a wide receiver one, is the long way of what I'm getting to agreeing with Chuck. I don't think he's a wide receiver one on any team. Because I think but I think if Pittsburgh can find a way to use him in his role correctly with this team, he will have success with this team. He just has to stay in that role.
Yeah, and this is what happens with a lot of these guys' careers, right? It's like your DK Metcalfs and your Mike Williams develop because they have your Russell Wilsons and your Phillip Rivers and eventually your Justin Herberts. That's just what sucks with these guys is that the Steelers didn't do anything different except for just hope that Kenny Pickett plays a lot better this year. You can develop, you can anticipate George Pickens can have all the growth in the world. And it's really not going to matter because if they're going to turn him into like a bootleg Ryan Tannehill, well, how many wide receivers were able to thrive in Tennessee other than A.J. Brown? And Deontay Johnson is the A.J. Brown of the Steelers if you were to just pick like a awful comparison type. Like it sucks. It sucks a lot.
Yeah. No, I agree 1,000%. And the last point, and then we'll move to a lightning round of like what we actually will do with George Pickens if you're unfortunate to own him, is like we forget, like Andrew, you nailed it. We're on the same page. Is like we forget Allen Robinson's there, and this is just camp news. But like everyone's saying that Allen Robinson is like fine, and I know it's Allen Robinson. Like I know I'm just saying a name, but like we know what he is. He's not going to be a wide receiver one. He probably won't be a wide receiver two, but that is someone who could take targets away from Pickett, and they arguably are going to play a similar role. So when you consider that you have Pat Freiermuth and Deontay Johnson, I just can't spend the wide receiver 28 or like the KTC is ranked 69 giggity. I just can't spin that in a startup. I can't spin that in anything when I know I can get better bets. And this is what I try to tell people. I'm not saying James Conner is like unrostable. I'm not saying George Pickens is unrostable, but right now they have like a huge discrepancy in their market value. And it's hard to roster those players because right now I'm getting so many George Pickens trades where they're trying to get someone who I actually like Brandon Ayuk. They're like, I'll trade you George Pickens in a second for Brandon Ayuk. And if you put that in a trade calculator, that sounds good. But like, no, I don't want maybe George Pickens is good in a second who's not going to get me points. I want the points. I want Brandon Ayuk, who I think is going to be good right away, and I can see a clear path, whether it's Brock Purdy. Yeah. Whether it's Brock Purdy, whether it's Sam Darnold, apparently.
You want to hunt George Pickens owners who might have written him off and try and get below market. And because and I don't think that trade window is going to be open. I don't think you're going to see a lot this year from the Steelers that are going to encourage you from like wow, look at the strides that this, I can see where this is going. Because Andrew, you're talking about you're right about what that Martavius Bryant flashy play stuff. But that was such a veteran team and such a veteran offense. And so just look for people who might be discouraged or, a buy low, but not even buy at current market value or above them.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm under the argument, and this is a little hot. I think we talked about this 2 or 3 weeks ago. George Pickens is entering unrosterable to me because I feel like having him isn't a player that's going to be a difference maker as far as what's going to help me win a roster. And I don't think I can ever move him for his perceived value. So it's just someone who I'm always going to be perennially unhappy with on my roster. And that's again, I'm talking about Gabe Davis. So if you can move your George Pickens, I totally would. Hopefully there's a guy who loves ESPN highlights because that's the guy you want to trade him to, Chuck's better than that. Don't give him credit. Look at his Twitter account. He actually looks at fucking stats and shit.
I think he could be so good, man. I think he could be so good, and I think he could be that. That Mike Williams, DK Metcalf stuff is real, and that's not just a cheap, lazy. Those guys are they're exactly who they're asked to be. They just have the supporting cast around them to allow them to be that wide receiver. And there's a storied history in the NFL of guys who have fit that mold. I just hope that the Steelers are a smart organization. They're the best developers of wide receivers that I've had in my lifetime, not just since I've been playing fantasy, ever. So, I mean, you just love that. That's the hope, right? It's the hope, but it's not the current reality.
I think that's the perfect finishing point, to be honest, what you said. And and I'll just close it to what we're all really saying. This is a Kenny Pickett post. If this is totally Kenny Pickett. If Justin Herbert was the QB, we'd be like, hell yeah, George Pickens, wide receiver 28, because there's meat on the bone there. But Kenny Pickett, I can't, man. I can't. Sure. Well, that'll end it this week, folks. We'll catch us again next week. We got other things cooking. Again, I am Fantasy Blue Chip. You're also known as Jagger. That's my street name. That's my my pedestrian name, I guess. And then with me, as always, is Andrew Leduc, aka Real Mr. Mallard. And then Chuck Bass, our favorite bass hole. You can catch him over at This Guy Sucks. And then he's here to save your lineups every week, twice a week, 3 times a week. If you consider all the shit he does for TSS, it's Justin Herrera. We'll see you again next week, folks.